I've got your energy stories for the third week of October 2024. And in the first one, the literal power struggle between utility AEP Ohio and the data center giants, including Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, is heating up and getting even more contentious. Last week, the tech companies filed a so-called negotiated settlement with the Ohio Public Utilities Commission to address AEP Ohio's interconnection proposal to deal with the unprecedented requests for power hookups. AEP Ohio's president immediately objected to the settlement, saying the company opposed it and the commission should reject it as well. AEP's original interconnection proposal filed in May requires the tech companies to enter into 10-year contracts and pay for 90% of their committed capacity while posting security equal to 50% of the minimal demand charge for the full 10-year period. It argues that if the data centers go bankrupt, the utility has made costly upgrades, which others would then have to pay for. At the time in May, AEP was serving about 600 megawatts of data center load with 4,400 megawatts of additional interconnection requests. That was a big jump, but nothing compared with the 30,000 megawatts of requests that have come in since then that would require enormous infrastructure upgrades. In their proposed agreement, the tech companies are asking for a tariff that would apply to any new load larger than 50 megawatts if the utility can prove that a transmission constraint exists. They also argue for a more flexible approach to capacity payments that would increase over time as facilities ramp up consumption or change power consumption. The companies are also requesting a regulatory inquiry into whether AEP's transmission system can be expanded by means of grid-enhancing technologies such as dynamic line ratings and reconductoring, as well as battery storage and virtual power plants. As utilities around North America face similar pressures in the face of unprecedented levels of AI-driven data center demand growth, it's to be expected that similar dramas will play out in multiple jurisdictions across the continent. Sticking with capacity prices of some nature, grid operator PJM will delay its planned December capacity auction for 6 months in order to develop reforms to the capacity market. That delay would affect at least 3 upcoming auctions set to be held in 6-month intervals, including the planned one for December to buy capacity for 2026-27 delivery year, as well as auctions in June and December of next year that would have addressed 27-28 and the 28-29 delivery years. The most recent capacity auction last summer saw massive price increases, sufficient to raise Maryland electricity bills, for example, by between 2 and 24%, according to the state's ratepayer advocate. Well, more transmission lines will help nearly everywhere these days, so the Biden administration will provide nearly $1.5 billion to boost 4 large-scale power lines. This is part of its $2.5 billion U.S. Department of Energy revolving fund aimed at helping bring riskier transmission lines to life. The 4 lines to be addressed here would add nearly 1,000 miles of new transmission while delivering up to 7,100 megawatts of new generating capacity throughout Louisiana, Maine, Mississippi, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. The Transmission Facilitation Program has the DOE acting as the anchor tenant, purchasing capacity on the proposed lines and then selling that to other customers once the lines are commissioned. Well, the New York Power Authority published its draft strategic plan to grow renewable resources in New York, identifying 40 projects that will cover every region of the state, totaling 3.5 gigawatts. Further work will be required to evaluate project economics, community impacts, and also real estate considerations. And finally, a hydrogen study by Harvard University researchers shows that most cost estimates related to H2 projects significantly understate storage and distribution costs needed to deliver green hydrogen to different sectors and end uses. The study concludes that hydrogen is a prohibitively expensive strategy for addressing greenhouse gas emissions, and that hydrogen project costs often exceed those related to directly removing CO2 from the atmosphere. H2 is a tricky little molecule that's not energy dense and has a light atomic weight, among other properties. Generally, it must be compressed or liquefied when being moved and stored. And in a gaseous state, it can do that Houdini thing and escape from nearly everywhere if pipelines and containers aren't specifically designed for it. So perhaps these findings aren't too surprising. Well, that's all for this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week.